Hi everyone, Katarina from Bloom and Passion here. Thank you so much for watching my video today. I'm going to show you how I made this cute little fairy garden magical card. Isn't it beautiful? I love it. The technique I used to create these flowers is called quilling. I'm sure a lot of you would be familiar with the term. If not, then these flowers are created using strips of paper. Okay, and we will walk through this step by step in a minute. First, I want to talk to you about the card base. This measures 5 by 7 inches, and to create the card base I use those dies from Surprise Creations that you've seen me use before, and I'm going to use them again. I just love these dies. The largest one created the card base. Okay, it's a 5 by 7 inches, and the two next ones down from it layered up perfectly evenly created the frame to go around the card. So the background is the ones I've used before, and I'm going to link to the video below if you can check it out how I used it. Those are my own design, and you can check them out also where you could get them if you wish. Also in the package comes this diagonal lines, again 3 layered. Okay, I think they are beautiful. They just give something extra to those cards. Okay, so in the inside I went with a little sentiment, and just like that, you know it is time to start something new and trust the magic of beginnings. And I added little stars like a fairy dust, the same little stars that are in the front. I think it's beautiful. I added lots of glitter. The little fairy is heat embossed with clear sparkle embossing powder that gives it a lovely shine and lovely glittery look. I don't know how much the camera is picking up of that. So we are going to create a card just like this, only in different color combinations. Now to go through the flowers, we're gonna do it one by one. Okay, so we're gonna start with this largest flower. I used 7 petals for this one, but you can go with 5 if you wish. You know, you don't need to do the 7. It's really up to you what you prefer. I just wanted a bigger flower in here beside the 2 smaller ones. Okay, so the paper strips that I'm using are just cut from A4 sheets of paper. So the length of all the bits that I'm going to be using is 11 3/4, but it can be a bit shorter, a bit longer. It really doesn't matter. It's not gonna make much difference. It's gonna alter the sizes of your petals slightly, but it's not too bad. Okay, so I'm using 4 different shades of oranges, which are peach, apricot, salmon, and flame orange. I'm going to link below again to a seller that I get my papers from. These are 160 GSM, but you don't need it. 120, 140 GSM works just fine for quilling. Okay, so this is a bit on the heavier side, but I love using this thickness. Okay, so to create these petals, I need to do one more. I already have 6 prepared. We will need 2 strips, of which I'm using the flame orange. So we need the full size as the A4 length, and this is 5 millimeters in width. Okay, so how to do quilling? Quilling is basically, I have a little quilling tool which I find really handy to have. I'm going to try to show you. Do you see there's a little slit at the end? It's like a pokey tool, but just a little slit in here where you can push your paper through. Sorry, I'm out of shot there. You can push your paper through this, and this will help you nicely and evenly roll them up. Now another tool that I like to have is these little boards. Okay, these little holes on the board are helping me to make all the little coils that I'm going to create an even in size. Now when you get these boards, they don't come like this with the cardstock at the back. They actually have like a cork board in which you can put little pins in if you want to create all different shapes, and there's all different techniques that you can use this for. But my 2 little kids just poked through them these little holes and got rid of the corkboard, so I just had to improvise here, put the paper in there, which works fine for me. You can also get rulers like this that have the same sizes of holes that you can use, but I do definitely prefer the board. Okay, so for these petals, like here, I'm going to take the orange one and I'm going to put it into a very, very tight coil. Once I got to the end of the strip, pull it off, and for these ones I'm using the number 15, just like that. Okay, so I'm gonna grab the other one as well. Okay, I've seen crafters who've been doing quilling who are not using the board, kind of they know what size it has to go to. I definitely prefer the board. I think it's a great help. Mine would turn out completely different sizes. Okay, so for the middle bit, the lighter shade that I'm using, this one is the salmon color. I'm only going to use half of the strip. Turn it into a little coil, and for this one I'm going to use the number 10, the one size below this one. Okay, like so. Now having a precision bottle for your glue is a great help. I didn't always use bottles like this, and this definitely makes it easier. So I'm just adding a little drop of glue just at the very end, and I push it in, make sure it sticks, and then I'm starting to form my little petal. Okay, so the middle of the coil should be in the center. Now if it moves a little bit, it's fine, and I'm just trying to create this moon shape. Yeah, and I'm gonna do the same to the other one as well. So my camera on the phone is facing upwards, so I had to stand up here to show you exactly what I'm doing, because I didn't see what I was doing on camera here. Okay, so again, kind of holding the coil in the middle, push it in into a nice tight, like this moon shape. Okay, for the little one, just the same, add a little bit of glue, and in this one I'm going to push the two sides in like an eye shape, I suppose. Okay, now take one of these darker orange ones and put glue on the bottom of it. Now on the bottom of it, because that's how I created these petals, but you can put this on the top or you can put it in the middle. Then you would have a little bit of a room on each end. That's fine. They all create different looking flowers for you. So for this one I'm going down here on the bottom, and I'm just holding this in place just for a little bit. And now add glue onto all of this side. Take the other one of your moon shaped paper coil and just hold them together nicely until they stick together. Okay, I think that's enough. Now I also added that same color that is in the middle, the salmony color. I added a full length of strip onto the outside of it. So I'm just gonna grab one of those. Add a bit of glue onto the side, not too much because you don't want this to start oozing out. And wrap it around the whole petal, making sure you're pulling it into a very, nice and tight shape, okay? Not so tight that you rip the paper, because that can happen too. Ask me, how do I know? Okay, so just wrap it round and round until you get to the very end of the paper strip. And just pinch it in until you get the desired shape. And now I like my paper strip to end at the bottom of the petals. I'm just going to cut that much away. Add a bit of a glue onto the end of the strip and glue it in. Okay, so that's really all. It takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of a practice, but these are really not hard to do. I actually find this quite therapeutic. Now, if you don't want your flower to be as big as mine was on the 7-petal one in here, you can just use 5 of these petals. It would still give you a beautiful flower, and a lot of times I use 5 petals. I very rarely use, you see, that's really nice too. I very rarely use the 7 petals, but for this one I wanted a bigger flower. Okay, so now we're gonna have to glue these petals together. For that, I'm going to create a little coil for the center of my flower. I'm just grabbing a couple strips of paper. It really doesn't matter what color it is, because as you can see, you will not see what's underneath that little design on the top. Okay, so I'm just making a real nice tight coil in here. And I just know from experience that for the 7-petal ones I need a larger coil than this. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue, and I'm going to join another paper strip onto it. Now I'm going to start adding a little bit of glue onto the bottom of the petals and attach two together. Okay. It just takes a little bit of time for them to stick. Just be patient with this. And now I like to go around this whole... Okay, so sorry, my camera stopped recording. Good job, I noticed I was onto my next flower at that point, so I had to take this apart. So if the petals are a little bit messed up on the bottom of the... that's why, because the flower was all assembled and now I have to do it again. Okay, so as I said, we glue 2 and 2 together, like so, in pairs, and then I go around and around this with a bit of a glue, and I'm just going to maneuver kind of this into place. It takes a little bit of a practice and it takes a little bit of a patience to get it exactly as you envision, but you will get there. If you give this a go, you will get there. It took me a while to learn how to do all the different techniques and all that, but it's not impossible. It really is relaxing, and it's just very, very time consuming. Now, to create all these petals and everything for the 2 cards, it really took me like a day and a half. It did. So it's quite a time consuming job, but it's so worth it because the results are beautiful. They are very unique and stunning. Okay, so just manipulate all the little petals the way you want to have them sit around that coil in the middle, and then add a little bit of a glue just to make sure that everything will hold together nicely, and just set this aside to dry. You will not see any of this bit, so it might look a bit messy now, but you will not see any of that because we will be covering it up with a little bit of a bead or flower or anything you would like to put in the middle. Now, if you don't want to put anything in the middle, then you would just need to be a bit tidier, which I was in the first place. But since I had to take it apart now, that's why it looks a bit so messy. Now, the next flowers that I'm going to make is these ones in here. They are two exactly the same, only used in different color combinations. Okay, so for this one, I've already made one of those flowers. This is the lighter shades of the orange that I'm using. It's the apricot and the salmon. And for this next one, I'm going to be using the peach and the flame orange. Okay, this is gonna be exactly the same, only in darker shades. I already prepared 4 of the petals. And let me just... Okay, so to create this petal, we are going to use a slightly different technique. And I'm going to use a full length of the peach color and just half of the flame orange. A bit of glue. I'm going to add, just run a little bit of a bead of a glue at the very edge of that paper strip and glue the 2 of them together. Now just make sure that this is holding on very well. Give them proper time to dry. Oh gosh, glue everywhere. Just give it a proper good time to dry, because once you start coiling this together, if it's not fully dry, it will fall apart, okay? So just hold it there. You will also need a half a strip of orange and a half a strip of the peach to wrap around the petal, okay? So for this one, I'm going to use, as I said, a slightly different technique. So once I'm happy that this is fully dry, I'm going to start making my coil, starting with the shorter bit of the strip, the flame orange color, okay? So just again, a nice tight coil. And this time we are going to use the number 20, but not straight away. I like to put it into the smaller one, into the 15 first, and let it uncoil a bit. And once it's done its job there, it stopped moving, I lift it out and put it over to the 20. This way, I don't know, it's just this way it works best for me. I know that the coils are going to be nice and even this way. Sometimes if I only put it into the 20, the coil is a bit tighter in the middle and looser towards the edges, so it just works better for me this way. Now I'm going to hold it in here nicely, and I'm gonna stand up again to show you what I'm doing with this petal. Okay, so I'm just going to start pushing it into like an oval shape. I'm trying to keep the coil in as much in the middle as I can, the center of that coil, okay? Now I like to take this little quilling tool that I use and I wrap it around it. Once it gets a nice tight shape, I move it up to this narrower bit of the quilling tool and I wrap it around that too until the ends of the petal touch together. Okay, so now I'm going to take half strip of the flame orange first, add a bit of a glue all around this petal, just on the outer edge, glue the orange strip all around it. And at this point I'm going to have to pull it in nice and tight. If you don't think that that gets that nice shape that I've been looking for, I'm just gonna go back with this a little bit more and just shape it until I get it exactly as I envisioned it to be. Okay, like so. Now at this point I'm going to start pulling it nice and tight. Making sure I don't rip the paper. This is why I like using heavier weight paper for this one, because sometimes when I use thinner paper, they can just very easily rip. Okay, again, a bit of a glue all around it, and I'm going to wrap this time the lighter color all around it. It's already holding its shape, so I don't have to pull this real tight, just making sure that it's going to stay nice and put in there. Now I'm going to cut away again this end bit of it and glue it down. Now the next bit that we are going to need to make this flower is that tiny bit of a coil in the middle. The paper strip that I used there is not even the half. Okay, so I'm just going to cut some of this away, like about two-thirds of that half strip is in here, and this gives me the perfect size to assemble that flower. I'm just going to add a bit of a glue in here. I'm going to pull it into a very nice tight coil, like so. Okay. Okay, so the next step is then to glue the petals all around that middle coil. I like to add a bit of a glue onto the end of the petal and onto the side. The end is going to get glued onto that coil and the side onto that next petal. So I'm just gonna do the same again, and then the side, like so, and just go all around the petal or all around the coil with the petals. So I'm just going to set this to the side as well and let it dry in there properly. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how I made these. Okay, and this is quite easy. Okay, so I'm using the peach color again and a dark green strip of paper. Now you can see these are thinner. These are 3 millimeters in width. Now, quilling strips you can buy ready-made already in packs. I like to cut my own because I used to buy them in packs, and there's so many colors that I never used, or they are just being placed from here and there and then being thrown away because they get awful messy, and I just like to cut my own as I use them. But then again, I'm not doing that much of a quilling, so I don't need all the different colors coming in packages. So I'm going to cut this to about 1/3 of them off. Okay, again, you can alter the sizes. As you can see on some of them, I have longer pinks or shorter pinks. Okay, so you can alter the sizes and have them all different size looking. You don't have to have them quite uniform. Okay, so in around 1/3 of a strip of an A4 strip, but you can make them a bit shorter and a bit longer from there. Okay, again, just give it a little minute to dry, and from here, starting with the orange color, I'm going to wrap it into a nice coil again. Add a bit of glue at the end. Wait till it stuck so it glues together, and then push the one side of it, getting this teardrop kind of shape. Okay, so that's all really to it. And I think about 9 or 10 of them I used on it, so just repeat it as many times as you wish. For the little leaves in here, I'm using that same exact technique with again the narrower strip, the 3 millimeter strip. Cut to about 1/3, okay, but as you can see, they all can be slightly different sizes because those leaves can be a tiny bit bigger, a tiny bit smaller. I like to make them all different sizes, in fact. Now I let this uncoil a little bit in my hands, okay? And I push them into this eye kind of shape that we done before, like so, okay? I'll show you another one. So again, pull up it into a nice coil, and I'm gonna stand up this time to make sure that I'm showing what I'm supposed to. Okay, so it's in a nice tight coil, and I'm just going to let it uncoil a little bit between my fingers. Now I add a bit of a glue onto this end in here. glue it together and push the two sides into this shape. And that's it really. Okay, so repeat it as many times as you want. The next thing that I'm going to make is these little roses. The little roses, you can use any die cuts, any templates that you may already have. I've cut them out of my silhouette die cutting machine, and as you can see, these are tiny, really tiny. Let me see, they measure about 1 inch, just above 1 inch, a bit on top. But even at this, if I call this all up together, if I called all this up, I would be too big for these little roses. It would be just way too wide. So what I like to do, I like to snip away some of it and just coil the rest. Okay, again starting at the end into a nice tight coil, bit of a glue at the end, and I'm going to glue it onto the bottom of the rose. Hold it there for a second, and that's it all done. Okay, the next thing that I'm using is these leaves in here, and these are just little leaf shapes that I've cut out again on my silhouette cutting machine, but you already may have some dies to cut out little leaves, so you can hand cut these as well, just a leaf shape. And I like to fold them in half, okay, and then I start folding them back and forth about 2 or 3 times, and then I get this shape in here. And I used 3 of these leaves in here, 1, 2 and 3. I've also used these foliage in here, which I've again cut out with my cutting machine, but you can use any foliage dies you may have. Okay, so I used 2 or 3 of those, 3 I think. The fairy. Okay, so for the fairy I just used this little die cut. I've cut it out I think 3 or 4 times, and I layered them up together, and I heat embossed it with the clear sparkle embossing powder. But I'm going to do another layer on this, because on this pink one I did 2 layers, and I think it just looks nicer that way. I like to add more layers of the embossing in here anyway. So once I layered 2 or 3 of these fairies up, then in between the last layer that is on the very bottom and the bottom layer of the top ones, I entrapped. I just entrapped. This is just like sewing thread. Okay, so this is going to be the thread that is holding those little balloons in place. Okay, so now I added a bit of a sticky ink and some more embossing powder. This is the clear sparkle from Wow. I love this one. I think I've never had to rebuy any other embossing powder than this one in here, because they last a long time, but this one I just use all the time for every single project I make probably. I love it. I love this stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to get my heat gun. Okay, so now I turned a little paper fairy into a nice strong embellishment. Okay, and I think that's all for the preparations from now. We are going to start making these little swirls in here, but once I'm making those, I already bring the card base in, because as we are making the swirls we are going to be gluing them in there. So I'm kind of going to copy the same design as I made on this card. I love it. So the swirls, these ones, I use the 5mm strips for, but you can go with the thinner one if you like. I just like them being a bit thicker. I used both the lighter color and the darker that I used on the leaves in here and here. Okay, so let me just grab some of the lighter ones as well. Now, I mentioned before that for some of the techniques I use a wider hole on this here, and this is what I mean. it looked exactly the same when it arrived in the post, only I widened this up a bit, okay? So now I can fit more papers in between the two little metal bits. And this is what we will need to make coils like this, because these have more paper in them. So I like to use about 5 or 6 strips to create these. And I alternate the colors for this first coil: dark, light, dark, light, dark. Layer them up perfectly. And if they are not layered up perfectly, just cut away a bit to make sure they are all even in there, okay? Take a bit of a glue, hold this nice and tight, a bit of a glue, and make sure that these, all of them stick together very well, okay? Again, give it a minute. Until this dries, I'm going to do the same into the other coil. Again, you can go 4, 5 or 6 strips, whatever you like. You can arrange the strips a bit differently, so the colors will look a bit different once you coil them up. I have added this one: dark, dark, light, light, and the dark again, okay? Just alternated them differently. It's the same colors I'm using. And just making sure that this will stick nicely. Now, while those are drying, I like to take a piece of plastic and some tacky glue, which I'm going to use this Collal tacky glue now. Spread a bit out on here. And now just take like an old credit card or a plastic spatula and just spread it out into like a thinnish layer, okay? Now, in here, you will need a pair of tweezers. Oops. And this quilling tool with the wider opening. The end where we stuck them all together, just start coiling it up again. And go about like halfway or so. Okay, just hold it in place for a bit. Make sure it holds that shape then a bit. From here, I just let it uncoil a bit like so. And in here, you can just manipulate it with your hands, high tight or high tight or high loose you would like it, like so. Now I'm going to, one by one, starting with the middle one, pulling it down a bit, and the very outer one, the first one, I'm going to push up. Okay, so just play with it until you get the shape you desire. I'm kind of gonna go with something like this. In here, hold it nicely together, and just going to add a bit of a kink into it, going this way. Now this is how it will be sitting on my card. So it's a bit wider than the other card, but I like this. Okay, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. In here I went a bit tighter with them, and here I'm going to be a bit looser. I think they look both nice. Okay, so cut the end of it, that there, and I'm going to add glue to the end. Now this way I'm going to make sure that this will hold this shape now for me. And I'm going to have to sit the whole thing into this spread out glue, and again in here you can still a little bit manipulate it if you want. Okay, so I'm just making sure that it's all holding nice and tight. Now I'm pulling one end with my fingers, the other one with the tweezers. Just lift it up nicely. You can dip it in more if you need more glue on it. Okay, so now I'm just trying to see the placement of this. Somewhere in here would be nice, I don't know, like so. And just place your hand on it, just a tiny bit of a pressure. You don't want to ruin your design, but just a bit of a pressure it will need to stick on, especially because I have so many layers and dimension in there. Okay, now in this here is not going to stay as long as it is, because obviously we're gonna be putting our flowers and all on here. I don't want too much of a, I don't want it to be too much in here. Okay, we will be cutting away from that bit. Again, do the same with the other one. Into a tight coil as far as you would like to go. Hold it in place a bit and I let it unravel. Again, manipulate the layers as much as you want. And again, I'm going to start coiling it this way a bit. I think this is nice. Okay, so around in here I cut these bits off and add a bit of a glue to this end. And again, exactly the same, just but I mean, this will hold nicely. This is a nice strong glue. Just make sure that the glue you're using is quite good quality. So I'm going to snip this off and remove this, okay? Like so. Now from here, I'm going to grab the foliages that I'm going to use. Put them nicely in like so. And the same one here, I'm going to cut this bit away. It's just really measure up where on your card they will fit nicely like this. And once the flower is gonna go on top, this is what it will look like. And again, in here, just to decide the placement for your flowers, I'm going to again copy this design. So this is kind of offset a bit, so this can come down a bit in here, and I will have to cut that away again. And then like so. I think that's nice. Now again, of course, in here you can use, if you want, hot glue or whatever glue you like using. Now the way I'm going to use this flower, just the same way as in here. I'm not sure if the picture shows, but the middle of it is kind of pushed in. The petals are pushing up a bit. So I'm just going to try to replicate that a bit. So glue in here and on these bits. So I'm gonna go with this one first. Just gonna see which bits of this flower are touching the card or the other flower. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to do this bit for the roses. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to grab a strip of the lighter green that is 3mm in width. Cut a bit off and just see where I'm going to place them. One, and the other one, and just how long they would need to be. I think that placement looks good there, just like so. So I'm gonna grab this glue again, and the tweezers come very handy with this one. Okay, so I'm going to just add a lot of glue onto this one. Again, because of the dimension on the background, I want to make sure that this will hold properly. but I'm not stressing too much, because once I add the roses onto the side of it and all the little leaves and all, they will hold in place nicely anyway, okay? So just don't be stressing if they keep moving, it's fine. It'll be glued down once everything is added to them. So just like so. Okay, now I take the little roses. Okay, so for these little roses I use the 3 or 4 all the different shades in here. I think it's 3. There's the flame orange, the peach, the apricot. Yeah, those are the 3 different ones. Now I'm going to start adding them first of all at the end. Okay, end of the little branch, I suppose. I love using these little flowers. They're just so delicate. They add a real nice touch. Okay, so I'm going to grab the little leaves, just the ones like we made. Okay, so I'm going to be grabbing these leaves and just one by one glue them onto wherever I like. I mean, there's no rules to what way to do this, just wherever you like yours to go. So I'm just gluing some of the leaves in here. So I think that there is ready. And another little thing that I did, do you see these little strips in here? They're just a little bit of a decoration, just really to fill it out a little bit where there's empty spaces. So I just got very little strips, like half-inch strips, just about half-inch. Okay, and I give them a little of a curl, like so. Take the, I think that's even long. I think 1/2 inch strips is enough. 1/2 inch, okay? A bit of a curl, a bit of a glue, and just wherever it needs a bit of something, I just press it down there and just hold it in place for a wee second. Yeah, that looks lovely. I mean, that's again fiddly. I mean, there's nothing about quilling that is not fiddly. Yeah, it takes practice, it takes patience, but it's really doable. Like when I started first doing quillings about 4 years ago, I used to say it's not for a faint-hearted. Because one thing that I never really had is patience, and this here requires a lot of it. So again, to do these bits in here, I'm going to do the same with the strips as I done with those 2, only this time I'm using darker ones. So what I like to do in here is I like to go in the end first of all. Okay, so add one on each end, and that kind of then going to give me the direction of all the other ones that need to be hanging in. So our next step is to place this little fairy. We'll go somewhere like this. Okay, so I just cut away some of the threads because they were too long, but I'll be cutting away more of them. So to make those little balloons, yeah, take a strip of paper. Again, I'm using the thinner one, just about 3 3/4, 4 inches long is enough. Okay, wrap it in a coil and let it unravel. Add a bit of a glue, and now what I like to do is take the tweezers. I hope you can see this, what I'm doing, and where the end is and the little bit of the middle of the coil, I pull it down and I hold it together like this. And now the coil is getting a different shape. Do you see that? It's the middle of the coil is pulled down onto the bottom. So I'm going to hold it in here, and I'm going to, actually first of all I'm going to glue my fairy down. So that's done. I like to take these foam pads, and I'm going to use 2 bits on the back of this fairy, and I stick the other one on top of that. Okay, and I stick the other one on top of this one. Okay, this is going to give me the dimension for the fairy, for the top bit of the fairy down, what I need to match the legs. So here we go. Add a bit of a glue for extra strength. And somewhere like this, I think it's nice, isn't it? Like so. Just hold it in place for a sec, make sure that this will hold in nicely and it will not move. And then I come in and just wherever the wings and all touch the flowers, I just add that extra bit of a bead of a glue. Just so I'm just making sure the fairy will stay nice and put in there, won't fly away. Okay, so now I just separate the threads. Again, fiddle a bit of work. So cut the first one to here for somewhere there. Grab the little balloon, add plenty of glue at the back of it. Take the thread that I've cut to size, and where the thread ends, just push down with this one. Okay, hold it in place for a second or two and go over to the next one. I'm going to decorate the middle of my flowers. I just cut out a piece of a flower like that. Any die cuts you may have, you can use. Now I'm going to first glue on the flower into the middle in here to conceal all that there. Now a little bit of a pixie dust. Okay, so to make the little pixie dust, I like to use stars, which I create using this cutting die that cuts out all different sizes of stars. But I don't have any orangey color glitter paper, so I just take a piece of white glitter paper and I take an orange alcohol marker. Okay, so in here I'm just going to place them here and there. I already have prepared and cut out the sentiment. I used that exact same dies that I used to create the frame on the front. So just gonna take some glue. The last step is to add some sparkle to the flowers. So, here's the two cards side by side. Here we go. Pink and orange. I think they both look pretty beautiful. I can't even pick a favorite now. I thought I liked the pink more, but now I'm not sure. I really don't know. I love them both. What do you guys think? Let me know which one do you prefer. The orange colors or the pink shades. Okay, now and just before I go, I want to show you why you should never give up, because these cards are just beautiful. When I started first quilling 4 years ago, I made these two cards. I've come a long way since then, haven't I, guys? Now, I don't hold on to the first of this and the first of that, but I deliberately held on to, oh, sorry about that. I deliberately held on to these two cards because I did want to improve and improve a lot from here. So yeah, this is, guys, where you should never give up, because with patience and persistence you can most certainly get there. Okay, so until the next time, thanks for watching. Bye.